Yes, y'all. To the beat, y'all. Yes, guys, I'm Si. Welcome to H Podcast Nation. We are back for another Patreon exclusive. If you're watching live, will be free on the channel in a week or so, if I remember to put it up, which I didn't last week because I'm clever like that. But we are live on Patreon as always for the big debate. And yet again, we're shying away from the easy debates like Marvel versus DC, which we'll do soon. But we're going to just going for something much less controversial. And we're going to talk about tonight assisted euthanasia, assisted suicide, assisted end of life. We're going to debate that. And then we'll finish off, or we might start with, is Batman a good role model for children? Which is going to be an interesting one. I think Reese hates Batman, but I think he only hates Batman because Batman's working class, and Reese is a proper Tory. Oh my gosh. Hugo Lloris has just made another world-class save, this time off Anthony Navali. I think he's made like 3 in the first half. Unbelievable goalkeeping, fair play. Oof, what a save. So there we go. So yeah, we're back. We've had some good ones over the last few weeks. We talked about gender. What did we talk about last week? That was quite an interesting one. I forget. Gender was the week before, wasn't it?
Yeah, my mind's gone blank. Wasn't it gender last week?
No, we've done one since gender, definitely.
But it was still gay footballers.
Oh yeah, we talked about why footballers
are not, and the text
why they're not coming out and the rest of it. Quite an interesting conversation, and that's quite topical at the moment as well. So really, I should have remembered to put these shows out on the main channel because they're like quite topical subjects, but I forgot well and truly, which is always good. I might put one of them out now tonight after we've done this, just to get it in. Because I think I've only put one out so far. It's just I'm so used to the schedule, I completely sort of forgot that I was adding to it. But
yeah, no point me reminding you because I'll forget, mate, before you do, guaranteed.
So there we go. So as normal, I'm joined by the man himself, Mr. Reese Pycroft. How are you, buddy? You good?
All good, mate. All good. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So obviously we normally go on. What?
Should be interesting, mate.
It should be, yeah. And like, as I should say again, I said a few weeks ago, like, sometimes we try to be clear on if it's our actual opinion to kind of separate it from that. But generally, we're just kind of trying to debate the subjects, give like both points of view. One of us will kind of pick a side, and we're kind of not necessarily, if we're not arguing for that side, but we might make some points on a side that we don't necessarily agree with, but we're trying to give as many points of view as possible, play devil's advocate, if you like.
Yeah.
But, at the end of the day, we just want to have an intelligent discussion without people resorting to name calling. And obviously we call Reese a Tory because he's a Tory, but apart from that, that's allowed, Reese, until you do something else, that's just it now. You are Tory Reese until
to be fair, that's
something else.
Fucking brutal put down, mate.
Yeah, it's brutal. So you need to do something else now to change the nickname, basically. Just try and make some, I don't know,
I'll work on that.
Try and make some bad statement or something. So I don't know, maybe say something racially insensitive or like something disablest.
Yeah, I reckon I can do that, yeah.
Well, then we'll just we can call you a racist instead then.
I'm allowed to, though. I got black friends, so I'm allowed to. I've heard that's like what you can do.
Yeah, got a black neighbour, and yeah, it's all fine. So where do you want to start this evening, mate? Do you want to go with the simple, sort of, or the light-hearted Batman? Is Batman a good role model? Although I think you're going to get quite heated over that. So
yeah, I think it's better to finish on the Batman.
Okay. Yeah, I think there's less to talk about with the Batman one. So we'll go with the big one first, which is tradition. Because obviously we tend to spend a bit more on the the more serious subject because there's
Yeah.
more points of view to it, isn't there?
Yeah.
So I'll let you go first, but like talk to me about assisted suicide, assisted euthanasia, end of life protocols, whatever you want to call them. There's lots of sort of different names for it. Effectively, it is someone being allowed to end their life, using a doctor and medication. You can't do it in the UK. I don't believe you can do it in America either. I think you've got to go to Switzerland to do it.
Yeah.
Which is unusual because Switzerland is like stereotypically someone who is like in the middle, isn't it? They don't sort of.
They've always been a neutral, haven't they?
Yeah, neutral. That's the word I was looking for. So it's kind of.
I think that's why they can do it. I think that's why they can do it. Their people are easy going, in they pretty much.
Yeah. So where do you want to start with it, mate?
I've seen people suffer at the end of their life, mate, for a long time when they didn't need to. And the bottom line is, mate, if you had a dog and it's suffering with terminal cancer or something and it's in pain 24/7, can't control its bowels, you're more than likely going to do the right thing and have it put to sleep.
Yeah.
How can you justify we can make that choice for our pets, but we can't make that choice for ourselves? You can't answer that.
But then where do you draw the line? So like, I think so. I with the you got like people with terminal illness, stuff like that, stuff which can't be cured, who haven't got a very high standard of living in terms of, like you say, they maybe lost control of their bowels, they're in a lot of pain. Where do you draw the line? Because there's some people who believe that you should be allowed to commit suicide if you are not happy, you're living day to day with depression or other mental illnesses, and you should be allowed to have the dignity of die with dignity rather than live in life continuing to suffer. Like, where do you draw the line with it? Because
with that,
look, mate, what I would say is both. I don't know about you, but I've been suicidal at points in my life.
Yeah,
and I'm glad that I didn't, kind of follow through with those thoughts.
Yeah.
But what if that had been available to me on the GP at certain times, would I have gone to that side of things? I don't know.
My personal choice there is you wouldn't be allowed to. Mental health, pretty much anything is curable, isn't it? The help of the treatment isn't out there much.
But so someone who's got, say, I don't know, I'm going to pluck a long-term mental illness, mental health condition out of it. So say something like
paranoid schizophrenia,
or bipolar disorder, or I had someone on the podcast before who had DID and so multiple personalities. That's something which is brought on by trauma, normally in childhood, where people kind of their brain splits and to protect them from the abuse or the trauma that they're going through. That can't be cured. So it's difficult, mate, because
right
on paper,
maybe it can
I
be
agree
cured.
with you.
Right, maybe it can't be cured, but it's manageable.
Yeah, but you shouldn't have to live in pain.
But
why should you have to live with if you're consistently traumatized every single day and you've been through counseling and all the rest of all the different things, and you're still you can't leave the house, you can't see people, you can't speak to people because you're so traumatized. Why should you not be given the same options that someone who's in physical pain and suffering? Why shouldn't they be given the same options?
Because I'm still a strong believer that medication and the correct treatments any mental health can be managed, but unfortunately, to get the correct medication and the correct treatment, and nowadays, unless you're loaded, it's not getting done.
Well, yeah, and like the fact you can't get,
But
for instance, with pain, you can't get stem cell replacement therapy in the UK and most of Europe is ridiculous. But like, so yeah, that, I mean, on a personal note, for me, like I live with pain all the time, as you know, and like if I lived in America, I'd have gone and got stem cell replacement therapy, and there's a very good chance that it would have not only helped my pain, but it could have possibly healed me completely to where my life would be massively different. And that's really frustrating to me. But then if I didn't have my kids and my missus, and I'd say I was a single bloke, I do wonder like how I would have coped with the last sort of 10, 12, 15 years or whatever, in terms of like 24 hours a day pain, and like there's no escape from it. So like so like are the rules that it has to be terminal? Because if that's the rules, that seems almost like, how can I'm not trying to be horrible, like, and I look, watching someone die from a terminal illness is horrible. It's brutal, because they're not the same person, and you just watching them slowly die. And as someone who felt like they were just waiting to die at one point in my life, because I wasn't contributing anything, I wasn't doing anything, my missus was having to dress me and feed me and all the rest of it. Like I just literally felt like I was just waiting to die. So like with a terminal illness, that's very much like that, but obviously like maximized, if you like. But like someone who's got a terminal illness is going to die anyway, so I can fully understand them wanting to die on their own terms. And obviously if you commit suicide, a lot of life insurances, things like that, which would go to your family, your kids, whatever, they get void if you take your own life, which I think is probably a big reason why a lot of people, particularly people who have terminal illnesses, that's why they don't just do it themselves, because they don't want their family to, to suffer financially afterwards and stuff like that. But
put yourself in that position. What would you do given that choice?
Well, you'd suffer through it just because you'd want them to be able to have it. But
you want your kids to have it.
Like my thing with it, with assisted living, I suppose, not even my thing. I suppose the other side of it is like it's difficult to find where that line is in terms of it's okay for this case, but it's not okay for that case. There's not like a direct point where you can say, yes, that's okay. No, they don't qualify. Like it's very, very difficult to
there is no black and white with it at all, and there's no set way you can do it, because unfortunately some people might be given like weeks to live, some might be given years to live. You don't know, so you can't have a set black and white for it. But I firmly believe that people with certain conditions should be given that choice.
But then also you can have someone who's been given 6 months to live and they're still alive 2 years later. It doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen.
Yeah.
Which makes it
is very rare, but
tricky again, doesn't it? Because that's an added
again, it comes down to what I said earlier though, mate. We would choose this for a dog because we know it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
But we can't choose it for ourselves.
Like part of me thinks that every single person should have the right to choose if they, it's like that autonomy sort of argument, isn't it? It's like it's your life, your body, your soul, or whatever you believe in. So you should have the choice of what to do with it, if that makes sense. But then the arguments against is like the experience of death is going to get more and more painful, contrary to what many believe. The forthcoming euthanasia will make it more rather than less painful, because it will put emphasis on the personal decision in a way which was blissfully alien to the whole problem of dying in former times. It will make death even more subjectively intolerable for people. People will feel responsible for their own deaths and morally obligated to rid their relatives of their unwanted presence. Euthanasia will further intensify all the problems its advocates think that it will solve. So this guy, that was a philosopher who said that. He basically says,
I can see their arguments totally. I can, because you don't want to be a burden on the people you love.
So does it create more problems?
On the other side, the people you love, if they're doing all these things for you, they want you in their life. That's the bottom line.
So what if a husband and a wife, right? So say, I don't know, let's for example, let's say me and my missus, right? Yeah. Say we made the decision that I wanted to end my life, and I qualified and and they said yes, but she disagrees with it. We're married, we've got kids. She wants me to carry on or whatever. As my wife, both legally and personally, should she have a say in the final decision?
Personally, I don't think she should, if you're of sound mind.
But
that choice then relies with you.
But in every other aspect of life, mate,
but there's some people who have physical injuries, and they'll divorce their partner because they don't want to be a burden on them, and they will.
Yeah, if we didn't have kids, mate, I wouldn't have been. I don't know. I would have found it very difficult to be the burden that I was.
It's hard to explain, innit? When you have kids, your whole outlook, everything changes. Yeah. Everything.
But then in every other aspect of life, a husband and wife, it's like a 50-50 thing, whether it's finances.
It is a legally binding contract. So
a mortgage, like everything is kind of like, you can't, like, you've got a joint bank account, then you both have to sign to change it. So if you disagree on the end of life thing and you're legally married, it does create an issue with it, I think, because I don't think you can just say, well,
but for me, it comes down to a moral choice.
But whilst I understand that, but in something as like this, like if you were going to sort of bring this out as a worldwide directive that people are able to legally end their life in certain circumstances using a physician and stuff like that, like there is a legal side to it, the same as with with any doctor, there's a legal side to it, and things have to be sort of considered and signed and the rest of it.
Well, then
what I think, but you know what I think would happen, mate? You'd end up with couples going to court with one saying, I don't want him, I don't want him to end his life. He wants to end his life. We've got X amount of children. We've got bills. We've got a mortgage, And then it becomes like a thing of like, you're just clogging up the court systems with these cases, which is, court systems are already overrun by just by the very thing of there's not enough prisons, there's not enough courts, there's not, all the rest of that. And I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point. But like, you can't, whilst it is a moral decision, and whilst I understand in some ways that everybody should be allowed to be in charge of their own mortality to a certain degree, you can't just write it off and say, oh, it's a moral decision and that's it. You just can't in this day and age. And particularly, if you're saying to me that euthanasia or assisted suicide, whatever you want to call it, is almost part of the world evolving, part of that evolution is everything being legally sound as well. And I think there's a problem with that side of it. Like, if the family, well, all right, even if it's not a married couple, what if my mother doesn't want me to do it? Like, I tend to agree with you, mate, and I think
I
it should be
totally
down
get
to
where
the
you're coming from.
person. I think the married couple is the best example because that's a legally sort of binding contract, isn't it? It's something which in every other aspect of life, the partners, if you're married, they have a legal say, they have a financial say. You can't sort of do one without the other, if you like. So I do think that's kind of the best, from the legal point of view, that's the best way to look at it, rather than mothers and other members of family. But I'm sure if it was to become a worldwide thing and there was family members who didn't agree, they would, go to court, or there would be all sorts of arguments going on where people didn't want other people to end their lives, but they want to, and then it comes down to, like, does this person have the right to do it? Does this person have the right to ignore their wife's or their husband's wishes? Because it's till death do us part, and honor and obey, and all the vows that you take. Like, do they mean anything or do they not? Because if that legal
I get
contract
you.
means something,
It would need to be wrote in stone, so this argument couldn't happen, because ultimately the choice should lie with yourself. If you're of sound mind, whether you've got a partner or children, or I'm sorry, but the choice should lie with you.
So another argument is that there are alternative treatments available, such as palliative care, hospices. There's also cannabis-related treatments and stuff like that. There's also many other different treatments which aren't necessarily widely available, say, for instance, in the UK, but are available in other countries. Like, you don't have to kill the patient to kill the symptoms. Nearly all pain can be relieved. I don't necessarily agree with that, but I'm just telling you what it says.
It can, but you would be in a permanent state of comatose almost.
I mean, not necessarily, but I get what you mean, but like, there's ways and means of which aren't a part of Western medicine, which other countries use, which have been proven or shown to be quite effective fighting illnesses such as cancer and stuff like that. So, like,
but you've got to have the money or funding to go do that.
But then if we're gonna, as a nation, say that we're gonna spend money on assisted suicide, because it would be financially, would be massive. It would cost so much money because of all the things you've got to go through to make sure that the person is of sound mind, if the person is sure that they're not, having a psychological break, that their illness is definitely, terminal, or the rest of it. And like that it would cost a lot of money to do and then the process of actually, that's what part of the reason why they stopped doing capital punishments like lethal injections and stuff like that is, yes, of course, it's the moral side of things, which I think a lot of people actually disagree with. We'll definitely do one on capital punishment at one point.
Yeah.
But like, it was also the cost of the courts where people were constantly appealing, the court, the transferring of drugs, the physicians that have got to be there to administer the drugs, and the people that have got to travel to be on site and stuff like this. Like, it's all a big cost. So you imagine the cost that would go into this.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Why not spend that on?
Yeah, mate, you've hit the nail on the head of why it'll never be in every country, because it's not doable. There's nowhere near enough clinicians or physicians to deal with it. It's impossible.
I mean, if you're going to do, say, let's just talk from a UK point of view then. Say the UK was going to allow it and bring it in this country. Why wouldn't you spend the money that you would spend on that could be spent on developing cannabis-based product or hemp-based products or other such products around the world which help with pain, treating of cancer, things like this. I mean, on a conspiracy kind of note, there's many people around the world who believe that there's a cure for cancer that is just kept away or kept secret from people like us because keeps you in check, doesn't it? And it keeps the population down.
Many people, there's proof out there, scientific proof from other countries. Cannabis has cured terminal illnesses, not just cancer.
Yeah.
The proof's out there, mate. You know.
So
but
what about this then? What about if
there's too much money and medication in there? Let's just call a spade a spade.
Big pharma controls everything, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So here's one then, mate. What about if I get diagnosed with? So I haven't got any of the health problems I've got now.
Yeah.
But what if I get diagnosed with ALS, something which will deteriorate? Could deteriorate fast, could deteriorate slow, but it will make me have a life which I don't want. I don't want to put that pressure on my family, etc., etc. So I would rather stop it soon, or I'd rather, as soon as I get my first symptom, I want to stop it before I become that burden. Like, should I be allowed to have that choice?
Again, that's one of them tough ones, and you'd need the clinicians or psychiatrists or whichever you want to call it to make sure you would have sound mind making the decision. Obviously, it's the decision you've made beforehand that you would get to a certain point where you're not of sound mind. The decision has already been made.
So, but what if when I'm of sound mind, right? I get it in writing and everything. As soon as my symptoms get to this level, I want to end my life. So even if my brain and my mind suffer in the meantime, I want to end my life at when my symptoms get to this point. Okay, it's all in writing, blah, blah, blah. But what if during like the latter parts, so sort of just as my brain is starting to deteriorate, I change my mind? But in the opinion of, say, your wife or your person, your people your carers, they think that it's just you. Oh, he's starting to sort of lose his mind a little bit. He's getting confused, blah, blah, blah. Becomes a massive moral thing then, because you could end up killing someone who doesn't want to die, who's changed.
Again, that comes down to the amount of psychiatrists and input and things that's needed for it. It's not feasible. Let's be honest. To do it 100% and have it right 100%.
Which is why capital punishment was ended in the UK, wasn't it? It's because it was just there's no way you can be 100% sure that person has done that thing unless it's like filmed. You can clearly see their face. And even now, I would argue with the technology,
with deepfake, mate.
With the technology, you can get an app which does it. You don't even have to have
deepfake stuff, innit?
Yeah, you don't even have to have like a expensive software and be really skilled on a computer. You can download an app on your phone.
Imagine what someone who's got all that software and is extremely skilled can do.
So you can't even trust your own eyes. So how can you, even if someone confesses, like you can't, you just cannot. And trust me, that makes me frustrated because there's certain crimes that I think you should be just executed for.
Yeah, but I'm with you totally.
Like if I was a judge or the executioner, I would feel horrific if I executed someone or sent someone to be executed, and then it later turned out that they didn't do it. They didn't even do anything remotely like it. They were completely wrongly accused, wrongly convicted.
Which has happened many times.
Yeah, that would ruin my life, mate. That I would never be able to recover from it. Especially if that person, not that it should matter, but especially if that person was a father or a mother, they had young kids or they had a family, it shouldn't matter if they've got kids or not. But it would, to me personally, I'd never recover from it. And
Oh no, it'd be devastating, mate.
So like, and this is my point with this, is like, there's no way to know if when that person, like, it could be that the person is not of sound mind to make the decision, but they've already made the decision previously. But then when their mind is deteriorating, so that they wouldn't be in a sound mind to make the decision themselves at that point. Like, they could just be scared as the moment comes closer. But how do you differentiate from that natural fear of dying and, no, I've changed my mind, I don't want to go through with it, if they're not quite, or if they're in between not being of sound mind and being of sound mind? And it's so problematic that I think, and this is why people argue against it, even as a thing in Switzerland, isn't it? Because there's so many complex sides to it and arguments to it. And like, part of me, like, you know, at its core, I agree with you. If it was a dog or a cat, we would put them out of their misery because it's the humane thing to do. If you hit I don't know, like a cow or a horse or something with your car, and you were like in the middle of nowhere, miles and miles away from, you know, any help and stuff, and that animal was suffering, you would at least consider putting it out of its misery.
Yeah.
Anyone would, because they're like, it's the humane thing to do. You don't want people or things to suffer. So again, on the basis of it, why wouldn't we do the same thing for human beings? However,
I know animals are classed as a lower life form to us. I do. I know that. I understand that. I accept it. But
yeah,
obviously, with pets, they become a part of the family, don't they?
Yeah, they do.
That's
but there's also a side to, sorry, mate. There's also the side to it of like, human beings you can communicate with to a greater degree, can't you?
Yeah.
So you can understand someone who, a human being, can tell you they're in pain, can tell you they're not happy, can tell you that, you know, they're struggling or whatever. So like, that's different to it. Like, there's only certain ways you can know that an animal is suffering. So
yeah, an animal can be in pain and you might have no idea.
So would you say that so basically a lot of people think there is no fundamental right to be killed or to be assisted with dying, and this assisted suicide would create a massive slippery slope, and it is real. Like, opening the doors to voluntary euthanasia and assisted suicide could lead to non-voluntary and involuntary euthanasia by giving doctors the power to decide when a patient's life is not worth living. So in Holland in 1990, around 1,000 patients were killed without their request. So basically, they weren't of sound mind. They were going through pain and suffering and illness and the rest of it. So the doctors made the decision.
Yeah, that shouldn't be allowed.
But unfortunately, mate, once you open those floodgates of, yes, it's okay to end your life, say, once you've done that and you sign the papers and stuff, if you're then not of sound mind, there's no going back. It's up to the doctors whether they do it. And I find it difficult, and you can never really control it. Like, there's reports in Holland that where the euthanasia and the physician-assisted suicide is legal, that it reveals that, like, doctors don't always even report it. So they will end a life through euthanasia for the right reasons, we're saying, but they won't report it because they know that, you know, what they've done, basically. And look, if someone who I loved dearly, it's a small circle, small number of people, if those people came to me and said, I've got 6 months to live, I want to have 3 months of doing everything I want to do and just have the best time of my life, But after that 3 months, I want you to help me die. I want you to sit with me. We'll have a drink. We'll just have a nice chat. I'll take some sleep, like a load of sleeping tablets. I want you to help me do it. Like, do you consider that? Would you do that for someone you love? So they didn't.
I can't answer that.
So that they didn't die
Yeah.
alone, like in a pool of their own vomit or whatever, and on a street corner or in a flat on their own. Would you do that for someone?
It would have to depend what the illness and things was, mate.
Well, terminal illness, they got 6 months to live.
It depends on what stage.
So it's at a stage where it's absolute that they are going to die, and the maximum they've got is 6 months. I don't know what.
Again, though, it depends on their quality of life. If they're able to do, like, my dad suffered with cancer, and I was there right till the very end with him. And the last day, mate, is my dad was quite lucky with it. He wasn't lucky when he got cancer, obviously.
Yeah.
But it wasn't prolonged and gone out. It was mistreated, basically. But he wasn't in agony with it and things like that. In hospital for the last few days of his life, it was not a life somebody would want to live, mate, at all.
Yeah. Yeah, my grandfather had a similar thing, but his was the opposite. It was
my dad was one of them people, though. If you'd have given him the choice, there's no way he'd have taken it. He just suffered till his last day not to do that to his family. He's one of them.
Yeah, my grandfather had the opposite. He had it like prolonged for about a year, maybe 18 months. And he was brutal, mate. Like, funny enough, we was talking about my missus the other day, like the change in him, the weight he lost, the going to visit him in the hospice, and it's like a completely different person. And the deterioration can be quite quick, but it just lasts, can last quite a long time. And obviously it feels like, it feels like longer as well than what it is. Because like looking back, it feels like he suffered for years and years and years, but actually it was like probably about a year where he was genuinely suffering. But it's like, it's a very, very, it's a very complex subject. And it's, as much as we say, like, you can't make it just a moral decision, it's got to have a legal side to it. But it's also got an emotional side to it as well.
Yeah.
And like, I can't sit here and say that if someone who I loved came to me and said, I want to go out on my terms, I don't want to be alone, will you help me? I can't sit here and say, no, I wouldn't, because I genuinely do not know. I'd like to think that so there's two sides to it. I would like to think that if I asked certain people to do that for me, that they would do it. But the other side of it is I wouldn't ask someone to do it, because I wouldn't want them to have to live with the thought of what they had done, even though I had asked them to do it.
I get that, but the brutal honesty of it is, mate, unless you pass in your sleep, no death is.
Yeah, unless you pass in your sleep or in a hospital or something like that. Like,
even in a hospital, mate, unless you pass in.
If you die at home, even if you've got a terminal illness, if you die at home, someone finds you. So, like, if you pass away in your sleep, and when they say, like, oh, someone's peacefully died in their sleep, like, there's that. But then there's also, like, if you take your own life, for instance, because you want to go out on your own terms, like, someone's got to find you. So that's brutal for people.
Totally. But that wouldn't be the situation with legal assisted suicide. People would know.
Yeah, but it's like that thing of opening the floodgates. So say in the UK now, right, they say, right, whilst we're not going to do it in the UK, we are not going to make, because I think it's illegal to go and do it, isn't it? The UK government can stop.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
They can stop you traveling to the countries which do it. So if they said, right, we're now not going to stop people from traveling, if they choose to do it, they meet the criteria and it gets all okayed, we won't stop you doing it. We won't charge you. We won't do anything like that. What happens is it does open the floodgates. On one side, you have more people applying for it, first and foremost. The second side of it is you'll have people who can't afford it, who will say, right, well, I can't afford to go to Switzerland or Holland to do that, but I want to end my life. So they'll do it. They might be more inclined to do it in their home or wherever. And I just think it's very, very complex, mate, at the end of the day. And like, we're not we're not experts in it, and we're trying to.
This is only what we believe.
A lot of it's from personal experiences, isn't it? Like, it comes from personal life experience and stuff like that. So, as we kind of round off this subject a little bit, what about personal choice? So, the pro euthanasia, assisted suicide kind of side of things will emphasize the importance of personal choice, autonomy. Shouldn't patients have the right to end their lives, dying with dignity? So, Dying with Dignity Patreon, Sir Patrick Stewart, has argued, we have no control over how we arrive in the world, but at the end of life, we should have control over how we leave it. However, the debate is not just about the right to die. It's about the right to help patients kill themselves. So instead of giving freedom to patients, euthanasia and assisted suicide is about giving other people the legal power to end someone's life. So like doctors, partners, whatever it may be. And assisted suicide is not it's not a private act. Nobody chooses assisted suicide on their own or in isolation. Euthanasia and assisted suicide, they're matters for public concern because they involve one person facilitating the death of another. Friends, relatives, healthcare staff, society, like, is a huge effect on the ramifications for everybody. And this is what makes it very, very difficult to navigate it. It's almost impossible, because for every time say me and you were in charge of making a decision. Sorry, mate, I will let you speak now.
No, go on.
Say me and you were in charge of this decision, right? We're going to decide whether this should be allowed and stuff, right? Is every time you come up with a good reason why, and this can be the criteria and etc., all good reasons, everything I agree with, I will always be able to provide an example, another case which is different but may fall into the same general criteria. I just think it's impossible, because
it is, mate, because bottom line, it comes down to an emotional argument. You can't control or predict emotion.
And the last thing
in no way, shape, or form.
Last thing I'll say on that before I let you have a proper good say about it is, no matter how impartial a human being is, everyone's a human being. So like, human beings have emotions. So no matter what the doctor is, the psychologist, whatever it is, they cannot not be affected by someone going to them, and whether they're terminally ill, they've got a brain disease, a mental health condition, whatever it is. Like, I could imagine that it's very convincing when someone is coming to you and saying, this is why I want to end my life. I'm living like this and this and this and this. Like, no human being cannot be affected by that, I believe, unless they're a psychopath or a sociopath. And I would suggest that having psychopaths and sociopaths be the people to make those decisions would probably not be a good idea. So it's a fucking flawed subject. But go on, mate.
You're spot on, mate.
I've
I've got no argument for it. You can't control emotion. That's why I'll never ever be worldwide. You cannot control emotion. Can't predict it. Can't control it.
So what about the compassionate side of it as well? Like the pro side of it, things will present the view that helping someone else to end their life is the most loving, compassionate thing you can do. But surely the most compassionate thing you can do is to care for someone you love until the end of their life and show them that their life has tremendous value, regardless of whether they're fully fit and, you know, the person you met when you were 20, or whether they're now 40 and, you know, weigh 3 stone and can't do anything for themselves. You still love them and care for them just as much as you did when they were able to pick you up and take you over the threshold or whatever, you know? Like,
oh yeah,
what is the more compassionate thing?
Again, it comes down to your own personal choice. Sorry, that is the brutal honesty of it. Because someone who's got to live like that, when they have got zero quality of life, mate, you know, pretty much never a happy moment for them. Is it compassionate to sit there and watch them like that? And it's emotion, mate.
Yeah.
The way I look at it, what I went through with my dad, I would not want my children to be there and see me go through that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't mean that in a selfish, horrible way. I know that sounds horrible.
No, I can fully understand it, mate. But then,
you know,
I mean, you can't.
I would not want my children to have to go through that if I could stop it. But unfortunately, it's never going to be feasible, mate. It's just not.
Yeah, and whilst there's no sort of instant cure for those things, it's part of an unfortunate part of life. But then,
I'm a firm believer there is a cure out there for every single illness on this world, mate. There is.
Yeah, I tend to think that, because do you know why I think that, mate? Is the analogy I would use is, you know, like stinging nettles, right?
Yeah.
If you get stung by stinging nettles, not far from those stinging nettles is a dock leaf, which will relieve the itching and the pain. So in this, I can't explain it because I'm not religious. I'm not massively spiritual, I don't think. So like, whatever you believe in, whether it's God or like spiritual or the universe or whatever it may be, I do think that for every reaction, there's an opposite reaction to that, because, you know, you can look around the world and like fire and water and all these different things. There's always
every single aspect of nature, mate.
Yeah, there's always an opposite.
But it will give.
So if there's an illness, I'd like to think that somewhere out there, there's some sort of thing which will relieve it or cure it. It's either being kept away from the general public, or they haven't discovered it yet because they're looking in the wrong places. Or the other side of it is it because things like cancer and stuff are not natural? Maybe they're man-made in their origin, like hundreds of years ago or whatever. If an illness is man-made, does that mean that then there isn't a opposite reaction and stuff? But you're kind of going down a bit of a rabbit hole with that, so I wouldn't necessarily go
yes
down
and
for
no.
this show.
If you can make it, you can then make it.
Yeah, well, I would
know
say that,
things can mutate, they can change, blah blah blah, but no, even man-made.
Yeah, like things like smallpox and stuff, or like the viral, the chemical weapons and stuff which they make. Like, if you can make the thing which does the thing, you can also make the thing which stops it.
And does the thing
to a certain extent. Like, obviously,
yeah,
if things get to a certain level, then you probably can't. But like generally, I mean, lastly, I and this is one which I am a little bit on board with, is like, what about the most vulnerable people? Because if you change that law to allow euthanasia or assisted suicide, it will inevitably put pressure on the most vulnerable people to end their lives for fear of being a financial burden, emotional burden, a care burden, among other things. It would especially affect people who are disabled, elderly, sick, depressed. They would fear, like, you'd have to face the added risk then of being coerced into it. So if you've got like a lot of money and you've got an illness, and if the people around you are not honest or not nice and they want your money and they want it now, they don't want to wait, and like, you're going to have that side of things.
Yeah, totally, mate.
If you've got people who will gain from someone dying, the fear and the anxiety would be promoted as opposed to the individual autonomy or the choice of it. Like, it would be completely different. So this is a quote which I want to finish on from the 1994. It's a long time ago. This was from a House of Lords, a select committee on medical ethics, who kind of looked into the subject. And they said it is virtually impossible to ensure that all acts of euthanasia were truly voluntary, and that any liberalization of the law in the United Kingdom could not be abused. We were also concerned that vulnerable people, the elderly, lonely, sick, distressed, would feel a pressure, whether real or imagined, to request early death. And that was their quote after they did the report. And like, that kind of sums it up pretty well, I think, which is very unusual for a government-funded thing. But it was also in the 90s, so there was no social media. And then this other guy, this doctor called Dr. Andrew Ferguson of the Care Not Killing Alliance, he says the simple truth is that the current law exists to protect those without a voice, the disabled, the terminally ill, and the elderly, who might feel otherwise pressured into ending their life. So, what do you do next, mate? Like, what's the next step with regards to this? Do you think it just has to be kept looking into and trying to do studies on the countries like Belgium and Holland where it is allowed? Or,
again, mate, because it's emotional and of the heart, you will never ever be able to do it, mate. You just can't.
So
every argument you've given is spot on.
Yeah, I know, I'm very good, but I've got a solution, but I've also got the thing which undoes the solution as well. So one solution would be is that if, say, person X has got terminal illness and their best friend, person Y, assists them in ending their life, they get a legal, they have a solicitor present to write a letter and explaining, it wasn't against my will. I did this. I asked him to do it. He helped me. We did it this way. This is what happened on this date for this reasons, blah, blah, all in like a legal document signed. And then it happens.
Yeah.
So the solution would be that in that situation, person Y does not get prosecuted in any way. And I don't mean not charged and prosecuted and taken to court. I mean, he gets questioned, afterwards to make sure they give the documents, and then that's the end of it. Because that gives people the autonomy and the personal choice, but it doesn't mean that their friend or family member who helps them ends up being charged. But you know the problem with that, mate? Is same thing.
Again, mate, family, everyone would jump in, mate, and say, no, we didn't want it. He's a murderer.
Yeah.
She's a murderer.
Opens it up
it's not
to opens it up. It's open to abuse in all the ways
there is
discussed.
There's no way you could word this where everyone is going to agree, or even close to it, mate. It's impossible.
Yeah, never. It's a never-ending debate, mate. But one I've really enjoyed in a weird way. Like, I gotta say, I give us credit for the last few weeks. Talked about some heavy subjects, and I think we've done a pretty good job of doing it. It's just a shame that the only people who've seen them is like a few people on Patreon. But I will change that. I will remember to put them out and stuff. Let's finish off on a slightly brighter note. Let's set Reese off on a bit of a whim and stuff. Reese, talk to me. Why did you want to discuss, is Batman a good role model for kids?
No, he's a prick. Mate, when I was a kid, I loved Batman.
End of debate.
No, here we go. Right. When I was a kid, I loved Batman. Everyone did, didn't they?
Yeah.
You know, because when you're a kid, all you see is Batman goes after this bad person and puts him in jail. Cool. You know, he didn't even kill him. Awesome. But as you grow up, you find out more about Batman, don't you? Films get a bit deeper. You see a bit more into the life of him.
He's flawed.
Guy's a prick, mate. He'll happily go torture people and have him close to death to get any information he wants. Then he'll go put him in jail, knowing full well they're going to escape. He knows it. They're going to escape. Yeah? Joker, I think Joker's twisted in the head, but I think deep down he's a good guy. And all he's trying to do is prove to people the Batman's a wrong one. Because the Batman won't kill anyone. If he killed someone, he wouldn't be Gotham's hero no more, would he? But he'll beat them to within an inch of their life gladly. He's got all this money. He gives a little bit to charity. Most of it he spends spying on his friends. Can't have no trust for that. He's got a plan how to kill every single person in his life.
Yeah. Interesting.
Psychopath. Come on.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, mate, to a certain degree. Like, but then on the other hand, I think everyone's got a bit of vigilante in them, in terms of, not that they would necessarily do it, but everyone's got a bit of, like, if someone hurt one of your kids or your family or someone you love, like, you want to go and hunt them down and do bad things. Well, I would literally. Yeah,
definitely.
But anyway, I say that for entertainment purposes only, and I would never do such a thing, because I'm a legal citizen and I would never hurt anyone.
How's that pig fan coming along anyway, mate?
Pigs are hungry. They're always hungry, mate. It's one of them things, mate, isn't it? Like, you know, it obviously is a fictional character, but like, kids watch stuff, don't they, these days? But do you know what, mate? I would rather my kids watch the Batman that we used to watch, like the old TV series.
Adam West.
Yeah.
Pow, kapow.
I'd rather them be watching that shit than fucking TikTok and that. Like,
definitely, mate.
TikTok stresses me out, mate. It really, really bugs me.
The Batman when you're a kid is a different Batman to the Batman when you're a grown-up, mate.
So then my argument to it would be, whilst everything you're saying is true, the things that you're saying are not, like, child-friendly or make him not a good role model wouldn't be seen by kids until they're of an age to understand. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's not little kids watching the Dark Knight trilogy, is it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, but I'm right, though, isn't I? He's a prick.
Oh yeah, he's a wrong one. Like, he wants the
real Batman.
He wants the heroic status.
Yeah, but no, he's
so he doesn't want to give that up, and he doesn't kill, but he'll do anything he wants, and he's not very nice.
And I'm not being funny. Like, what a fucking stupid choice. If you're a billionaire and you want to become a superhero, I'm gonna be a bat. No, you be Iron Man or someone cooler. Come on, I want to be a bat. That's some deep underlying trauma issues there, man. The guy's a psycho.
Well, in fairness, his parents got murdered in front of him, didn't they, when he was a kid? So
totally, mate. Trauma,
mate. Trauma causes all problems.
Maybe
as always,
Batman
mate,
should go to Switzerland.
Yeah, well, he should have gone to counselling, probably. As always, mate, really enjoyable, really interesting show, really interesting debate, and be very interested to hear the people's views and the comments and stuff, and see what they think. So let us know what you think with regards to, like, assisted suicide, and all, of course, keep sending us your suggestions for subjects to be debated. I know Will's setting in Marvel versus DC, so maybe next week we'll do Marvel versus DC as the light-hearted one, I think it'll get
I call
quite
dibs on
testy.
Marvel.
Yeah, I bet you do. I hate DC.
Too late,
though,
then. You get Batman, prick.
and then why don't we do capital punishment as well?
Yeah,
that's a
good for
one.
me. Not capital punishment. It's good for me. It's good for others.
Yeah,
but yeah,
capital punishment and Marvel versus DC on next week's show. Spread the word about a big debate. It's a new series. I will put them out now. I might put one out tonight as well, so people can see them. So please do spread the word. Interesting conversations on tricky subjects. That's all I will say. Take care. Good night. God bless. He says, "Play the goddamn clip, Simon. Play the clip. Play the clip.
Play that clip, then, mate. I'm on all the time, mate."